just building strength alone doesn't always get rid of knee pain or pain in general. You need to be working on other things or look at other things as well. And I think with certain patients, you'd have to be really careful with the regressions you use and how you do that. Hey guys, Chris Lendrum from Physio Plus Fitness. Today's video is going to be a video about knees over toes guy. He's all over YouTube and the internet at the moment with his program, so I wanted to have a look at one of his videos and see what I thought. So let's crack on. Wow, so first thing I would say is he's obviously got some good jumping ability. I've seen some of his others videos as well, and his jumping ability is crazy.
This ability did not come from doing this, nor anything close to it. It actually came from an opposite viewpoint of working the absolute most regressed that I could. Let's take a look. So I just finished Friday's knee ability dense strength session. So rather than seeing how much weight I can squat, it's how deep can I squat with perfect form. And that was built on Wednesday's session where I worked this quality one side at a time with the ATG split squat, which is built on Monday's session where I worked the very base stability.
So a couple of things that I would say with this that I really like. So he talks about the fact that he didn't build his strength by just going heavy and doing lots of plyometric stuff. He went right back to foundations and built his ability to perform the exercises and get into a deep squat, for example, with perfect form. So he was building his ability for his knees to work through a full range of motion, which I think is a really nice concept to have. He also then talks about doing that through working on his ability on a unilateral side, so a single leg side, which I think is really important for people because often you're going to have imbalances on one side, you're going to be weaker on one side. So when you do bilateral movements, meaning a squat or a deadlift or things where you're doing both sides at the same time, often you will compensate or you'll use your stronger side more than your weaker side or your less mobile side. And so form isn't going to be ideal. And so working one side at a time, really good way to develop that.
Evidence shows the better you are, the stronger you are on a step down test, the less chance of knee pain and knee surgery you have. So we've turned this into a safe progressive strength movement.
So he says evidence shows that the more strength you had, the more stability you have on a single leg step down test, the less chance you have of surgery or injuries. Now, I don't know about that. I think that it'd be interesting to see what studies he has to back that up. I definitely think step down exercise is a great exercise to do. I love it as an exercise, but whether there's any direct links between that and lack of surgery, I don't think is the case. I think that even with studies that look at that, it's very complex to work out whether that factor alone is the reason why someone's not having surgery, because obviously there's going to be multi-factors that go into why someone has surgery or not.
What your ankle can't handle then goes up to the knee. So you know me now as the guy who's like obsessed with the tibialis, right? But that started for me as the most fragile guy, going all the way down to a muscle that no one had ever taught me to train because it was so low and so regressed. So what have I done differently? I've spent more time building this muscle, building the ankle mobility.
I think this is a really good point he makes, and one of the things in some of his other videos I really like about this guy is that he talks about, for example, the tib anterior muscle. You know, people often do calf raises, they often do strengthening exercises for the posterior chain of the leg, the calf, the hamstring, etc. Yes, we do quad strengthening, but very rarely, and I've not seen this in physio much. You guys leave me comments in the section below if you prescribe this exercise or typically would do or have seen it in the past, but certainly from my point of view, I don't see this exercise prescribed a lot, and specific tibialis anterior raises or tib anterior raises, and there really isn't any reason why not. We work on muscle groups around a joint. If you're trying to strengthen around the knee, why aren't you? We do the quads, we do the hamstrings, why don't we do the tibialis and the calf? It doesn't make any sense.
Strength, then building the strength with that knee over your toe. And we don't even start with any of these implements at first because we want your body building all these lower muscles. So we start, it seems like a slower approach, but life is long. That's what we're training for. So we're training so that if you're someone who thinks you'll never jump high, you actually could. But you also could be the 75-year-old still playing with your grandkids. There's quite literally video of the most similar guy to train how we do, going not for maximum weight, but for these ranges. And there's a picture of him at 75 years old, jumping over a hurdle at 75. I've never seen a picture of someone at 75 years old jumping as high as him, but it's not because he lifted in the traditional way.
Okay, 2 points on this. Number one, I think I love the point about life is long. Life is long, and developing these abilities does take time. The one thing I would say about what he says about the 75-year-old guy, anecdotal evidence isn't great. Just because that guy, 75-year-old guy, could do a jump doesn't mean that it's only because of these other factors and because he had good knee and ankle mobility. There's plenty of reasons why that could be the case, and he could have got there without necessarily doing these things as well.
Lifted to rebuild from the ground up with the full ranges of motion. So keep that in mind, that was it for me not about pushing the upper limits, it was quite the opposite. It's how low can you start in? How low can you start in your feet and ankles, and then how much internal adaptation can you create? So when we're in these positions, we're actually following evidence to prevent tendon degradation, to actually strengthen and build the tendons, to actually strengthen and build the ligaments and prevent the loss of cartilage. Because if you look, no one can deny that the correlation between loss of cartilage is actually from stopping your knees going over your toes, not from embracing it.
There's no evidence for that. So you can't say that the loss of cartilage is because people don't get their knee over their toes. The loss of cartilage happens for multiple different reasons. We don't fully understand it. There are different hypotheses around why it happens, or the factors. Some of it's aging as well, so we have to take that into account, and some of it's genetic factors. There's loads of different reasons, but it's definitely not the case in my view that your people are losing cartilage because they're not going over their toes. Doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do, but you can't make that assertion.
And there's an entire population, everything I just said. I talked about dense strength and these loaded movements. Then I talked about knee ability zero. And it goes even further than that. Just by walking backwards, you're strengthening with your knee over your toe. Strengthening knee over toe starts by just walking backwards, and there's a variety of ways. I put out endless free articles on how simple it is to get started. The stronger you get backwards, look at that in slow motion, the more protected you get forwards. You quite literally gain more strength to protect yourself when you go forward. So
yeah, I like that. I like the idea of walking backwards. You're basically doing like an eccentric movement of the movement that feels sore, and I like that. I like the fact that a lot of his training and methodology seem to be around this kind of eccentric training component, which we know is massively important for strength building. We know is massively important for controlling of the muscle. It helps with injury prevention with things like Nordics, etc., for hamstring injuries. So there's good evidence for that, and I think that's a really useful thing. So I really like that. And also he really focuses on full range of motion. So he's kind of focusing on full range of motion strengthening, full range of motion stretching with load. And I think that's a really, really good idea as well, because stretching the muscle but under load means you get more adaptations. We know there's some sarcomerigenesis which happens with those sorts of movements as well, which basically means that you get some ability for the muscle to actually be longer and then be more flexible in turn. So yeah, really like it.
I did my 100 miles of ROKP, reverse out knee pain. I did 100 miles of that. I then did full 12 weeks of all the knee ability zero exercises with no weight, forcing myself to rebuild from the ground up and to rebuild internally, so that then I could get into progressively loading these evidence-based positions that we want to be strong in. And remember, everything regresses. This right here, that is a ATG split squat.
Love the fact that he talks about regression. Everything can be regressed. Just because he's showing these movements that you might feel with a patient or with someone that might be way too advanced for them, or they're never going to be able to do it, doesn't mean there isn't a regression that you can do for that then builds them up and progressively loads them over time to the point where they can do it, and that's going to then have a good impact on their pain and function long term potentially. So yeah, I really like it.
My goal is to be able to dunk with my kid. Why not try to dunk with my grandkid? That's my goal is longevity. And in sports, longevity is really money. And in life, longevity is money. So
Again, love his point of view here on longevity. He wants to be able to dunk with his kids. He wants to be able to dunk potentially with his grandkids. So I love that, like longevity. And this is a theme throughout a lot of his videos. He talks about, you know, some of these things he can do. It took him 2 years to get to that point. And I think you have to think about that with yourself or with patients, that rehab and progressively overloading someone takes a long time, and people have to be committed to it. And if they're not committed to it, they're not going to reach those and achieve those goals. So I think with anything in life and with rehab and anything with you know, with regards to pain and rehabilitation, it takes a long time, and a lot longer than patients often want to understand. A lot of patients don't understand how deconditioned they actually are and how long it's going to take them to actually get to where they want to be. And so I think that there's an educational portion there with our physio management, which is really needed and necessary to get patients to understand how long it might take, but that it's worth it.
Pain is not the only way to do it. I'm simply using tools left by different geniuses along the way, turning them into things that we can all benefit from. That's what it's all about.
Again, love it. I'm not saying many bad things about this guy, to be fair. I really like it. He's using tools from other people. I think this is what I tend to do. I'm certainly not any, you know, great thinker, but I tend to look, or you know, the classic quote is "stand on the shoulder of giants." So just look at the greats with regards to rehab and physio and strengthening, and take tools and things from all of those people. I think if you can take good things out of all the different facets and then basically mold them into what you need for that patient so that they get the right treatment at the right time, that's the key for me. So final thoughts. I think I really like this guy. I've watched, this is one video on how he rebuilt his knees after 10 years of chronic pain. But I've watched a couple of his other videos as well, and I have to say I'm really impressed. I think that what he promotes is a really good thing. He's essentially promoting full range of motion and strengthening and loading, particularly in the eccentric portion of the movement around the knee. He's focusing on all the muscle groups, so tib anterior, calf, glutes, quads, hamstrings, and working those positions that really allow a full depth movement. Doing that through bodyweight exercises to start with. There's lots of regressions for patients that can't do, or people that can't do these movements to start with. And he focuses on progression over a long period of time. So yeah, I have to say that I'm thoroughly impressed. I think he's great. Couple of things that I would say, and this is from watching some of his other videos though, is that I think we have to be very careful about our structural explanation of pain. And we know with chronic pain, particularly persistent pain, there are a host of factors that lead into that. There's social factors, so how someone thinks about pain, their belief structures, their emotional factors, social factors, their work situation, their nutrition, their weight. There's lots of things that can influence someone's pain, and strength is not the only thing. You are not going to get everyone out of chronic pain just by working on strength. So I would disagree with him in the sense that if you just work on strength, you're not going to get everyone better, because actually some of those people, there might be other factors going on, psychological factors, emotional factors that you need to look into or help them with before they're able to get out of pain. And if someone's belief system and factor is that if their knee goes over their toes and they feel any pain, that they're doing themselves harm, then if you give them these exercises to do and say, no, it'll be fine, they won't believe you and they won't do what you're asking them to do. If you educate them, you talk about pain, and you use some of this pain education stuff, and you can combine it with some of these things over time, then amazing. I'm sure you can get unbelievable results. And I think in some of the other videos he talks about how some of these things aren't evidence-based yet, some of these exercises, because they've just not been done, like the tibialis anterior raises, etc. But he thinks that, you know, research should be looked into this, and I agree. I think it really should be. But I think, again, when you look at any of the literature and look at the research, just building strength alone doesn't always get rid of knee pain or pain in general. You need to be working on other things or look at other things as well. And I think with certain patients, you'd have to be really careful with the regressions you use and how you do that. But all in all, I would say, really love his message. I love the way he does the strengthening work. And I think this guy is really, really good. And I thoroughly sort of recommend going over and checking out some of his stuff. because I think he's really good. And if you've got knee pain, give it a go. You know, there's no reason why this wouldn't help you, and I think it can be really useful. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos, guys. If you are, leave a like and a subscribe to the channel. You'll receive notifications if you hit the bell icon. That means you get more videos like this. I'm doing loads of videos on reacting to different things. If you've got some things you want to get me to react on, then let me know in the comments section, because it's always useful. I'm also doing videos on fitness and on physiotherapy specific topics as well, in terms of different assessment techniques and etc. So yeah, get involved, leave me some comments, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.